Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, September 5th, 2024, and you're listening to Alex's News. Riverside is in for a scorcher today, with temperatures soaring to a sweltering high of 111.1 degrees and only dropping to a low of 95.3. Please take precautions to stay cool and hydrated in this extreme heat. Coming up on today's episode, we'll examine the impact of a recent Supreme Court ruling on former President Trump's election case and what it means for the legal proceedings. We'll also look at a new bill in California that could change the way we drive by introducing car speed warnings. Finally, we'll explore the lasting influence of physicist T.D. Lee on China's scientific community and research landscape. Stay tuned for these stories and more on Alex's News. We begin with a significant development in the federal election subversion case against former President Donald Trump. A crucial hearing is set for September 5th, which could determine the future course of this high-profile prosecution. For more on this, we're joined by our political correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, can you give us an overview of what's happening?
Certainly, Grace. On September 5th, U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan will hold a hearing to decide the next steps in the federal case against former President Trump. This case, which charges Trump with plotting to overturn the 2020 election results, has taken a new turn following a landmark Supreme Court ruling in July.
Can you elaborate on this Supreme Court ruling and its impact on the case?
Of course, according to reporting from the Associated Press, the Supreme Court's decision has significantly narrowed the scope of the case. The ruling granted former presidents broad immunity from criminal charges for their core constitutional duties and presumptive immunity for other official acts. This has led to several key developments, including a revised indictment from special counsel Jack Smith's team.
What changes were made to the indictment?
The revised indictment, as reported by ABC News, now focuses more on actions characterized as private rather than official presidential duties. For instance, it emphasizes Trump's collaboration with private attorneys like Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, who spread false claims of election fraud. It also includes efforts to submit fraudulent slates of presidential electors through private lawyers and consultants.
How has this affected the prosecution's strategy?
The prosecution has had to carefully reframe certain aspects of the case. For example, Trump's attempts to persuade Vice President Mike Pence to overturn the election results are now presented in a way that distinguishes between official and private conduct. The indictment still includes general election interference allegations, such as conspiracies to defraud the United States and obstruct the electoral certification process.
What about the defense team? How are they responding to these developments?
The defense team plans to file motions to dismiss the case. One of their arguments, similar to a ruling by a Florida judge in a separate case, is that Smith's appointment as special counsel was unconstitutional. This is a significant point of contention that could potentially impact the entire case.
Speaking of other cases, isn't there another federal prosecution against Trump?
Yes, that's correct. As KTVZ News Channel 21 reports, there's another federal case involving classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Interestingly, that case was dismissed in July by U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon, who ruled Smith's appointment unlawful. Smith's team has appealed that decision.
Given all these complexities, what's the expected timeline for this case?
Neither side expects a trial before the November election. The extensive work required to determine which acts alleged in the indictment can remain part of the case, in light of the Supreme Court opinion, is likely to cause significant delays.
Lastly, Ethan, can you touch on the broader implications of this Supreme Court ruling?
Certainly, Grace. The ruling on presidential immunity could have far-reaching consequences. It establishes that former presidents have absolute immunity for actions related to their core constitutional powers and presumptive immunity for other official acts. This expanded presidential power and immunity could make it harder to prosecute former presidents for actions taken while in office and potentially delay trials. It's a development that could reshape our understanding of presidential accountability in American democracy.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive overview. We'll be sure to keep our viewers updated as this story develops. We turn now to a story that could change the way we drive in California. The state legislature has approved a bill that would require new cars to warn drivers when they're speeding. For more on this, we're joined by our transportation reporter, Chloe. Chloe, what can you tell us about this new legislation?
Well, Grace, this is a significant development in road safety measures. According to NPR, California lawmakers have approved a bill that would mandate new cars sold in the state to be equipped with technology that warns drivers when they exceed the speed limit by more than 10 miles per hour. This could make California the first state in the U.S. to require such speed assistance technology, starting with the 2030 model year.
That's interesting, Chloe. Can you tell us more about how this technology works?
Certainly, Grace. The technology in question is called Intelligent Speed Assistance, or ISA for short. It uses a combination of AI, imagery, and GPS data to detect speed limits and warn drivers when they're exceeding them. It's worth noting that this technology is already mandatory in the European Union for all new cars sold since July 7, 2024.
I see. And what's the rationale behind implementing this technology?
Well, Grace, safety is the primary motivation. According to the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, speeding causes more than a quarter of all crash deaths annually. Safety advocates, including the National Transportation Safety Board, argue that this technology could significantly reduce traffic deaths and injuries. In fact, a study conducted by SINTEF in Norway found that universal adoption of the ISA system could reduce the number of fatalities and serious injuries by 12%.
Those are compelling statistics, Chloe, but I imagine there must be some opposition to this bill. What are the critics saying?
You're right, Grace. The bill does have its critics. The National Motorists Association and some auto industry groups argue that the technology isn't yet reliable enough for widespread implementation. They're concerned about potential false positives and driver distraction. They also point out that the U.S. lacks the necessary infrastructure for accurate speed limit detection, such as clear and visible speed limit signs, which are more common in Europe.
That's an interesting point. Are there any other concerns being raised?
Yes, Grace. Privacy is another major concern. These systems collect data on the vehicle's speed and location, which could potentially be used to monitor a driver's behavior. However, it's worth noting that in regions like the European Union, strict privacy laws require that any data collected by such systems can only be accessed with explicit consent from the driver.
I see. So what's the next step for this bill, Chloe?
Well, Grace, as of September 5, 2024, the bill is now on Governor Gavin Newsom's desk. He has until the end of the month to sign it into law. If signed, this legislation could potentially set a precedent for other states to follow, possibly leading to a nationwide adoption of speed warning systems in vehicles.
Thank you, Chloe, for that comprehensive report on this developing story. We'll be sure to keep our viewers updated on any new developments.
You're welcome, Grace. We'll certainly be watching this closely.
And that was our transportation reporter, Chloe, with story 2 of 3. Thank you, Chloe. Here are some other headlines. U.S. authorities have uncovered a covert Russian influence operation involving right-wing influencers. 2 Russian nationals working for RT have been charged with conspiracy to launder money and violate the Foreign Agents Registration Act. They allegedly funneled nearly $10 million through shell companies to a Tennessee-based media company to produce and disseminate videos on social media platforms. The influencers involved claim they were unaware of the Russian affiliations. In France, President Emmanuel Macron has appointed Michel Barnier as the new Prime Minister. Barnier, known for his role as the EU's Brexit negotiator, faces significant challenges in assembling a cabinet and guiding a government in a deeply divided parliament. This appointment comes after months of political instability, following a snap parliamentary election in June. Okaloosa County in Florida is proposing to acquire the historic ocean liner SS United States and convert it into the world's largest artificial reef. The ship, currently berthed in Philadelphia, faces a September 12th deadline to leave its location. However, a vote on the acquisition has been delayed until September 17th. adding uncertainty to the ship's fate. Protests have erupted in Argentina, following President Javier Milei's decision to veto a bill aimed at increasing minimum pensions. The bill intended to raise pensions to keep pace with high inflation rates. Pensioners took to the streets of Buenos Aires, leading to clashes with police. Congress may attempt to overturn the veto with a two-thirds majority vote. Israeli military operations in the West Bank have resulted in multiple fatalities, according to Palestinian officials. The incidents occurred in areas known for militant activity, particularly in Jenin. The ongoing violence is linked to the broader conflict that began on October 7th, with efforts to broker a ceasefire facing significant challenges. We're continuing our morning news with a look at how one scientist's work has had a lasting impact on China's scientific community. Joining us now is our science correspondent, Ethan. Ethan, can you tell us about T.D. Li and his influence on Chinese science?
Certainly, Grace. Sungdao Li, born in Shanghai in 1926, has been a pivotal figure in shaping China's scientific landscape over the past several decades. Despite achieving international recognition, including the 1957 Nobel Prize in Physics, Li maintained strong ties to his homeland and worked tirelessly to advance its scientific capabilities.
That's fascinating, Ethan. Can you elaborate on some of the specific ways Li contributed to China's scientific development?
Of course, one of Li's most significant contributions was the initiation of the China-US Physics Examination and Application Program, or CUSPEA, in the early 1980s. This program trained 915 PhD students and played a crucial role in developing young Chinese physicists. Many of these graduates returned to China to take on leadership roles in academia and industry.
That sounds like it had a substantial impact. Were there other initiatives Li was involved in?
Absolutely. Li was instrumental in establishing several important institutions and programs in China. These include the National Natural Science Foundation of China, the National Postdoctoral Science Foundation, and various institutes of modern physics at universities across the country. He also played a key role in advancing high-energy physics in China, guiding the construction of the Beijing Electron-Positron Collider and the Beijing Spectrometer.
It seems like Li's influence extended beyond just scientific contributions. How did he impact the broader scientific community in China?
You're right, Grace. Li's impact went far beyond his scientific work. He inspired a sense of national pride and self-esteem among Chinese scientists, encouraging them to believe in their potential and strive for excellence. His message of enhancing self-reliance in the face of international competition resonated deeply with many young Chinese scientists.
That's quite inspiring. But were there any controversies surrounding Li's engagement with China?
Yes, there were some controversies. Some critics raised concerns about Li's interactions with the Chinese government, particularly after the Tiananmen Square protests in 1989. There were worries that his efforts to maintain good relations with Chinese leaders might have compromised his principles. Additionally, his attempts to influence Chinese governance and promote transparency had limited success.
Despite these controversies, it sounds like Li's overall impact was positive. How would you summarize his legacy in China?
Li's legacy in China is one of scientific advancement, educational reform, and inspiration. His contributions have shaped both the scientific landscape of China and the lives of countless individuals who are motivated by his vision and achievements. Li's influence continues to be felt in China's ongoing scientific and technological development.
Thank you, Ethan, for that comprehensive look at T.D. Li's impact on Chinese science. That's all for this segment, and this concludes our morning news for today. Thank you for joining us. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 3.5, the Perplexity API, and the Google Cloud Text-to-Speech API. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.